An elderly priest had grown weary of hearing confessions of adultery from members of his parish. One Sunday during his sermon, he declared, "If I hear one more confession of adultery, I'll resign." Since he was beloved by all, they devised a code word to address the issue: fallen. From then on, those who had committed adultery simply confessed to having fallen. This arrangement worked well for both the aging priest and his congregation, ensuring peace for many years. However, after the elderly priest passed away at the remarkable age of 93, a new, younger priest took his place. The new priest decided to pay a visit to the mayor and expressed his concerns. He said, "Mayor, something must be done about the sidewalks in our town. You wouldn't believe how many individuals come into the confessional speaking of having fallen." The mayor began to chuckle, realizing that no one had informed the new priest about the code word. But before he could explain, the priest playfully pointed his finger at the mayor and remarked, "I don't see why you're laughing. Your wife fell 3 times just last week." A young nun employed by a local home healthcare agency was on her rounds when her car ran out of gas, leaving her stranded. Fortunately, there was a gas station just a block away. She decided to walk to the station and request a gas canister. Upon arriving at the gas station, the attendant regretfully informed her that the only gas canister they had was currently on loan. He offered to keep an eye out for its return and suggested she wait. However, since the nun was en route to visit a patient, she decided not to wait and headed back to her car. In her car, she began searching for any container that could hold gas and noticed a bedpan that she was planning to take to the patient. With her resourceful nature, she took the bedpan to the gas station, filled it with gasoline, and then carefully carried it back to her car. As she poured the gas into her car's tank, 2 men observed her actions from across the street. One of them turned to his companion and humorously remarked, "I'm aware that the Lord turned water into wine, but if that car starts, I swear I'm going to attend church every Sunday for the rest of my life." In a remote mountain village, every spring, a particular mountain woman followed a consistent routine. She would journey down to the town as soon as the frosty ground warmed up. Her annual agenda always included giving birth to a baby, gathering supplies for the upcoming summer, and then returning to her mountain home. After several years and an ever-growing number of children, she looked particularly fatigued when visiting the local doctor. "Doctor," she sighed, "I'm at my wit's end. We now have 7 children, and it seems like every year there's another one. I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. I have to do something to stop having all these babies, or I'll go completely mad." The doctor, after giving it some thought on how to address this issue tactfully, finally came up with a plan. He advised, "On your way out, buy a 10-gallon bucket from the store. Every night before you go to sleep, place both of your feet inside that bucket and don't remove them until morning." The woman, feeling hopeful, nodded in agreement, thinking that this might be the solution she was desperately seeking. However, the following spring, right on schedule, the woman was back in the doctor's office, ready to deliver another baby. The doctor was utterly astonished and asked, "Ma'am, I distinctly remember instructing you to sleep with your feet inside a 10-gallon bucket every night. What on earth happened?" She replied with an innocent look, "Well, Doc, when I went to the store, they had run out of 10-gallon buckets, so I thought 2 5-gallon buckets would work just as well." In the quiet hours of the night, a distressed elderly lady rushed to the hotel receptionist, her face filled with shock and fear. She exclaimed, "Please, you have to come quickly. I just spotted a man without any clothes right outside my window." The receptionist, concerned for the guest's safety, immediately followed her to her room. The elderly lady pointed to an apartment building across from the hotel and exclaimed, "There! Right there!" Peering through the window, the receptionist could only see the upper half of a man's body in the apartment, as he was shirtless. She attempted to reassure the elderly lady, suggesting, "Oh, it might just be a man preparing for bed." The elderly lady questioned, "How can you be so sure he's completely naked?" Perplexed, the receptionist looked around the room, puzzled. She asked, "What do you mean?" With a playful wink, the elderly lady replied, "Try standing on the dresser." One evening, two couples decided to have a fun time together and play a game of poker. As they were deeply engrossed in the game, Dave, one of the participants, accidentally dropped some of his cards onto the floor. Bending down under the table to retrieve his cards, Dave made an unexpected discovery. Carl's wife, Kate, who was sitting across from him, wasn't wearing any underwear beneath her dress. This startling revelation left Dave quite flustered. In his haste to resurface from under the table, he ended up banging his head on the table. A little while later, still reeling from the discovery, Dave excused himself to go to the kitchen to fetch more snacks and drinks for the group. Kate, Carl's wife, seemed to have a sense that she had been noticed and boldly followed Dave into the kitchen. She leaned in closer and whispered, "When you were under the table just now, did you see something?" Caught off guard by her forwardness, Dave decided that honesty was the best approach and confessed that he indeed had seen something. Sensing an opportunity, Kate offered, "You can have it, but it won't be free. It will cost you $500." Dave was torn between his morals and the financial implications of this offer, but the temptation was too significant. After a few minutes of deliberation, he nodded in agreement. Accepting his decision, Kate informed him that her husband, Carl, would be out playing golf the coming Friday afternoon, which was a time Dave usually had free. She instructed Dave to arrive at her house at 2 p.m. on Friday as planned. When Friday finally arrived, Dave was at Carl's house at the designated time. He handed over the agreed-upon $500 to Kate, and they went into the bedroom to complete their secretive transaction. Afterward, Dave got dressed and left the house hastily. Later that day, Carl returned home from his regular golf game at 6 p.m. He casually asked his wife if Dave had come by that afternoon. A bit nervous, but trying not to show it, Kate responded, "Yes, he did stop by for a few minutes." Carl appeared to mull over her response briefly before asking in a more serious tone, "Did he give you $500? Struggling to maintain her composure and trying to keep her expression neutral, Kate answered, "Actually, yes, he did give me $500. Looking relieved and content, Carl surprised Kate with his next words. "That makes sense now. Dave came to me while I was at the golf club this morning and borrowed $500, promising he'd drop by our house later in the day to repay the money." A wealthy Australian resident decided to throw a grand party and invited all his friends and neighbors. Among the guests was Brian, the only native Australian in the neighborhood. The party was set around the pool in the backyard of the millionaire's mansion. Everyone was enjoying themselves with drinks, dancing, barbecued prawns and oysters, and lively conversations. In the midst of the festivities, the millionaire made an unusual announcement. He declared, "I have a 15-foot man-eating crocodile in my pool, and I'll give $1 million to anyone brave enough to join it in the pool." Before anyone could fully register his words, there was a sudden, thunderous splash. Everyone turned to see Brian in the pool, engaged in a fierce struggle with the crocodile. He fearlessly jabbed the crocodile in the eyes, delivered powerful punches, headbutted it, wrestled it in chokeholds, and even bit its tail. It was as if he possessed incredible martial arts skills. The pool water churned and splashed during their intense battle, both Brian and the crocodile shrieking and causing a commotion. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, Brian managed to strangle the crocodile and let its lifeless body float to the pool's surface. An exhausted Brian climbed out of the pool, met with the astonished gazes of the guests. The millionaire, true to his word, declared, "Well, Brian, I suppose I owe you $1 million. Brian, however, humbly declined the offer, saying, "Nah, you're all right. I don't want it." Finally, the millionaire asked in bewilderment, "Brian, then what do you want?" Brian's response was simple yet telling. "I want the person who pushed me into the pool." In the realm of organized crime, there existed an exceptional figure, a highly skilled accountant, adept with numbers. He worked for the upper echelons of the mafia. His unique attribute was his disability. He was deaf. This disability rendered him a prized asset, as the mafia believed his inability to hear guaranteed the safety of their secrets. However, a predicament arose one day when the mafia's top boss scrutinized their financial records. To his astonishment and ire, he discovered a puzzling discrepancy. An entire $1 million had inexplicably vanished. Concerned and furious, he determined that this situation warranted an immediate and thorough investigation. The mafia kingpin arranged a meeting with the deaf accountant. Given the accountant's condition, a professional sign language interpreter was also summoned to facilitate communication between the two parties. In a dimly lit, tension-laden room, the three of them sat. The kingpin initiated the conversation with a menacing tone, addressing the missing $1 million. The interpreter accurately conveyed the boss's demand for answers. The accountant, appearing bewildered by the accusation, communicated through rapid hand movements, insisting that he had no knowledge of what the boss was referring to. The interpreter faithfully relayed this response to the mafia head. Growing more frustrated and suspicious, the boss leaned in, adopting a low and threatening tone, and made his demand clear. But the accountant, sensing the rising danger, reiterated his ignorance. Now the kingpin's patience had worn thin, and he became furious. He pounded his fist on the table, creating a suffocating silence in the room. Then, in a swift, unexpected move, he pulled out a gun and aimed it at the accountant's head, conveying an unspoken ultimatum to the interpreter. He threatened to end the accountant's life if the money's location wasn't revealed promptly. The gravity of the situation now weighing heavily on him, the interpreter conveyed the message. The accountant, realizing the peril he was in, promptly signed, "Okay, I concede. The money is stashed away in a briefcase, securely hidden beneath the wooden structure of my porch at home." Anxious, the boss immediately demanded to know what the accountant had said. Without hesitation, the interpreter turned to the boss and reported, "Well, boss, he said to go take a hike.